The Nigerian prince scam is kind of a cliche these days. You feel like, oh, I could totally spot that one. But in the age of AI, there are so many other examples of fraud that you probably couldn't spot. So, we're going to talk today about the innovation that this technology has brought for good and oftentimes for bad, at least as it relates to financial crime. Our guest is Larry Zelvin. He is the head of security advisory at BMO Financial Group, and he joins us from New York today. Hello there.
Bruce, nice to see you again.
We use AI all the time, and so do the criminals. Give us a sense for just how much and how this technology is being used today.
Yeah, Bruce, I want to start with I am a fan of AI. I think AI is fantastic and I love the potential of AI, but we're going to obviously have that other conversation today. And it's the security concerns around AI. And I'll be honest with you, as bad as I'm going to make it sound, it's early days. But folks, don't run away from AI, don't run away from your computers. But at the end of the day, it's pretty bad. And look, it really depends on, I'll start about the digital, but there's also paper media that I will cover as well. And I'll talk broadly and then we can go to wherever you wish. But in the broadest sense, I mean, AI has made it easier for folks to actually commit frauds, both online and offline. It has lowered the bar. You don't need a lot of technical skills. There's plenty of applications out there that if you say, hey, I want to set a very sophisticated phishing email and I need the addresses, it'll build it all for you. Please do not try that at home. If you want to find out vulnerabilities that you can exploit, there's AI that'll help you there. But I think what's getting a lot of attention, and probably people have seen this to some varying degrees around these deep fakes, where you can actually impersonate someone. And there's been celebrity deep fakes. You've seen Taylor Swift, among others, endorsing things that they're actually not endorsing. As we go into the paper medium, I will tell you that there's also mailing solicitations about cryptocurrency, potential investments that are really spoofing people, other investments that are rather exotic. And then you're also seeing some things that look like they're coming from government where you may be in trouble. So, folks, it's coming at you in so many ways.
I've heard the phrase digital pickpocketing. What does that even mean?
Well, that's not even an AI base. That's just a new tool that if you happen to be on a train, a bus, in a crowded space, your proximity, sometimes it's contact, but it's getting almost to the point where you can just have closer proximity, that somebody can actually break into your phone and then steal your applications and your information. So that's a whole new level of scare that we can go into, but that's what that is.
We're going to talk about this from a consumer perspective, but of course, I know where you work. Corporations are spending huge amounts of time and resources to try and fight these at source because it's not in a bank's best interest to have its clients defrauded. What are some of the big things that the institutions are doing to try and address this to mitigate some of the risk?
Yeah, look, there is a corporation element of risk and mitigation, and then there's an individual element of risk and mitigation, and the two are different. So I think it's important to cover those. And let me talk it again at hopefully a macro sense, and we can go as far as you want. From a corporate perspective, we, among others, have invested heavily in AI fraud detection and response controls. We have things that can actually identify somebody who is using a voice and calling our call centers to pretend to be our customers, trying to steal usernames, passwords, etc. So there's AI that'll actually recognize the voice of somebody who's a fraudster. We share that with other institutions. That's phenomenal. And you probably have had this as well, where you've been on travel and going, gosh, you've never been there before. Is this really you? You're seeing telephone companies, I hope, are seeing be careful. This phone call may be spam. This may be fraud, things like that. So we're all kind of getting there. And there's more technology on the way, looking at anomalous behavior and also known bads. For the individual, it's really becoming a much, much bigger problem because they can not only invest in these kind of technologies, they're not really on the market. So how do you as an individual user, and I will just share, my mother-in-law unfortunately has advanced dementia. My wife has had to change her bank accounts 3 times in 7 months because she falls prey to helping children. She's into church charities. And none of these things are real. They're all fraud. But unfortunately, because of her cognitive abilities, she doesn't have the ability to detect. And that's outside of the bank's control system. So unfortunately, she has to defend herself.
What would be some other tips you would offer people from an individual perspective to address this in today's day and age? Because I mean, I remember like, don't click on the link. Well, that seems kind of quaint advice now, given how
Yeah.
sophisticated things have become.
Yeah, so look, we got to remember the old and the new. The old is still a problem. So don't click on those links. Don't open those attachments. All those things are still working. Some people ask me, hey, Larry, are you worried about the quantum threat? I said, I am, but I'm even more worried about people still clicking on links and giving away their information. But to get to your question on when you're looking at these AI threats, what are some of the triggers? First, a sense of urgency. Look, World Cup is coming up. You have the Olympics. You have all these concerts. Be careful of those emotional events that drive you to click on things and move your money faster because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it. When it comes to payments, if they're only taking debit cards, if they're only taking checks, wires, instant payment, but not credit cards, that's a signal, right? Credit cards actually are your best means for paying for some of these things because if you find out it's a fraud, you can actually stop it by calling your credit card company or your bank, depending on how you're doing it. If it seems like it's too good to be true, it probably is. If it's a really lower cost, that's another trigger. And let me highlight one other, and I could go on for a while. Watch those QR codes, right? People are like, oh my gosh, QR codes are fantastic. They're easy. But folks, you're really just going to a link, but it's so small, you're not really looking at it. Slow down. Think about what you're about to do with that QR code, because in many cases, the fraudsters realize that you're not paying attention and they're using it against you.
So those are all great suggestions and behavioral in nature. There is also, it would seem, a layer of software or services that you could fold into how you run your financial life. So we, all used to have like the McAfee virus scanner on our computer, less common now. What are some of the applications that are cropping up out there that would help protect individual consumers that maybe we should consider or are already a part of how we engage with financial institutions that are just behind the scenes and we don't see them?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I've been in this industry for well over a decade, and honestly, there aren't a lot of tools out there, and none that I would endorse at this time. Unfortunately, it's going to take programs like this to educate people, where you're going to have to do a lot of the work yourself. Unfortunately, what does that actually mean? Well, when you're going on a website, you may want to obviously look, but you may want to check with their Better Business Bureau. You may want to go online, social media, and go, is this a legitimate site? Those few minutes, or maybe even seconds, depending on how fast you do it, could save you hours and potentially thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars before you give up your information. Be careful of those things with urgency. I will tell you, my wife recently got a text saying, Amazon, hey, you owe $483. Call this 188 number, right? And you need to do it now. Otherwise, we're going to do a file action. She goes, oh my gosh, should I do this? So I quickly Googled, does Amazon have a 188 number? And I won't fill in the blank. Google said Amazon doesn't have any 188 numbers. So
Wow.
unfortunately, a lot of these things, you have to do your research. You've got to really slow down, be skeptical. But I wish I could tell you, hey, go buy X product, but X product doesn't
Not going
exist
to
in the
do it.
market.
I was recently on vacation. My credit card was cut off by my financial institution, and I couldn't reach my financial institution or reset anything online because my phone didn't work in that country. So two-factor was an enormous hassle. I found out after that I could have a separate, authenticator on my bank account, which I didn't know in advance. But it's a real inconvenience, not just the fraud. I mean, obviously, that's what the banks are trying to protect, but also the measures that they take to try and help us as consumers. Where's the balance there? 'Cause it was an enormous inconvenience to try and get my financial life sorted out because of a charge that turned out to be a charge that I had made while on vacation.
There is no balance right now, right? It is really
Right.
a risk reward kind of thing, right? And so I guess, the question is, and you can work this out with your financial institution, depending on your relationship with that financial institution, is it better for you to have thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges? Or is it better for you to have the inconvenience of, hey, I can't use my credit card, and hopefully you have others, but I'm really sorry you couldn't get through. That is troublesome and something you should bring up to that institution.
Yeah.
And if it's BMO, we can talk later. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day,
What they
have
said when I finally reached the call center, and I'll say this
yeah.
because I was under the impression that I didn't have to tell my financial institution that I was traveling anymore
Mhm.
because AI was so sophisticated, it would be able to tell that I had booked that flight and arrived in that separate country. When I finally got the call center, they're like, no, no, you need to call us every time and we'll put that on your file.
Yeah, look, you have controls, and this is the hard part. I mean, when you have a cell phone or others, in many cases, you may not know all the options you have available to you. And again, you may want to research some of that, but you actually can turn on, hey, geolocate me and please shut my car down. But in some cases, a lot of the AI models lose, not because you're necessarily are in a different location, but rather it is a that plus a pattern of behavior that does not actually look like you. So we've gotten to that kind of sophistication. So if all of a sudden you had, let's say, hundreds of dollars in this would never be you, of course, Bruce, in bar charges, or in all of a sudden you're buying kind of things you've never bought before,
Right.
that'll be a trigger. But do know it's very rarely just one thing. It's usually a couple of things
Right.
before a bank will take action.
And to answer your question, on balance, I would rather have the hassle than the $1,000 in fraudulent charges.
Yeah,
Larry,
at the
really
time you
appreciate.
may not feel that way, but
Yeah,
honestly, at the
at
end of
the
the day,
time
I'd
it
much
was super
rather have.
annoying. I'm like, I'm on my vacation. I can't even pay for a meal. Really appreciate your context and the call to action that your remarks prompt. We appreciate you being here.
Bruce, thank you so much for the opportunity, folks. Be safe out there, but also enjoy and live your lives. So hopefully, this is making you smarter and not more afraid.
Larry Zelvin is the head of the Security Advisory Unit at BMO Financial Group. He joined us today from New York.